Hey there everybody, it's Mike DiLisio, and today I'm going to be reviewing Horrified American Monsters, coming from designer Michael Mulvihill and publisher Ravensburger. In Horrified American Monsters, you are playing as investigators trying to defeat the American cryptids, monsters, as opposed to the classic Universal monsters that was your nemesis in the original Horrified game. Let's head over to the table. I'll give you a general overview on how the game plays, then we'll come back here and I'll give you my final thoughts. Okay, Horrified American Monsters is a cooperative game where investigators that are represented by these little standees here, and they are of different types: mountain man, journalist, psychic, agent, jock, cryptozoologist, and the scout. The agents are trying to defeat a number of monsters that you're going to choose at the beginning of the game, and there are different types of monsters: Banshee of the Badlands, Chupacabra, the Jersey Devil, the Ozark Howler, Bigfoot, or Mothman. You are trying to defeat those monsters before your terror level hits the maximum, all right? Now, the way the game is set up, you have adjustable difficulty. So they say for the first game, they recommend that you play with only 2 monsters, and you start with the Banshee of the Badlands and the Chupacabra. A novice game is any 2 monsters because those 2 are considered the most simple. A standard game is any 3 monsters, and a challenging game is any 4 monsters. In the back of the rule book, they go into a bit more detail about each of the monsters, give you their complexity, low, medium, and high, and also give you a fair amount of background on how you set the monster up and how you defeat that monster, all right? So again, each of these are going to have their own setup, which is detailed on the back here on what you would have to do. There are a number of monster-specific tokens that would be placed on these, either on these boards, sometimes out on the main board. I don't have them all now because I'm just kind of showing you the basics here. But each of the monsters also has a nice mini that corresponds to it that would be placed out there on the board. You would also have a frenzy marker here that would go to the monster with the lowest frenzy order. So let's say, for example, we were playing, as they said for your first game, with the Banshee of the Badlands and the Chupacabra. You can see the frenzy order here is 1 and 3. So the frenzy marker would start with the Banshee of the Badlands. That can move throughout the game, and it's very possible that it might move throughout the game, but that's how it would start. So let's just say, for the purposes of explanation or example, that we were playing a 2-player game, the Mountain Man and the Psychic. What this is going to do is it's going to tell us a couple of different things. It's going to tell us what our starting location is and the number of actions that each one has, okay? So the Mountain Man says it starts in the Ranger Station, which is right up here, and the Psychic starts in the Mansion, which is up here, all right? And they would have a number of actions and a special ability. The special action for the Mountain Man is to place their investigator in any space. The special ability for the Psychic is to place your investigator in a location with any other investigator. So in a 2-player game, that just means going to where the other investigator is, all right? But again, there are a number of different characters. This one has no special action but 5 actions. The agent, the jock, all allowing you to do different things and a different number of actions, all right? So on your turn, you're going to do a number of different things depending upon how many actions your particular character has. You can move to any location, taking any number of citizens with you. These are citizens. They are nowhere on the board right now. You're going to be seating them, and they'll tell you their name and where their kind of safe space is. So Nora wants to get to the farm, all right? So you can move. If there are citizens on the board, you can take them with you. You can guide a citizen to or from a adjacent location. You could pick up any number of items in your location. You can share items between investigators, and you can advance a challenge by using an item at a specific location, and defeat a monster by following its unique instructions. Also, you have special actions that are noted on your card. Like I told you, the Mountain Man can move anywhere, and any player can play any number of perk cards, all right? These are perk cards. They are things that can help you. You would start the game with one, and you can get more throughout the game, all right? All good stuff, all right? Perks, as they would imply. All right? So you're moving about the board, collecting items, trying to potentially advance the for each monster. So in the case of the Banshee, to advance at their location, use a brown token to roll 1 die or a yellow token to roll 2 dice. A hit or power means to move any violin 2 spaces back towards the safe zone, and a miss has no effect. All right? So you're trying to, in this case, move these violins into a safe zone so that you can then attack them. All the monsters have different ways of advancing and defeating them. Okay? It adds a nice bit of asymmetry. All right? Each one is going to play slightly differently. So you're moving around, picking up items, and hopefully trying to advance against the monsters before the terror level goes up. Well, how does the terror level go up? There's a couple of things that are going to happen. After you've taken your actions, let's say I've picked up items, I've moved around. Okay, I've picked up more items, picked up items, moving, maybe. Then we're going to go to a monster phase, all right? So you're going to draw a card from the monster deck, which is right here. Okay, so you draw the top card from the monster deck, and you're going to do a number of different things. The first thing is you're going to draw items from the bag randomly. The number is denoted right here. Then you're going to do whatever the action says, and then you're going to activate the monsters. So let's go ahead and do this in order. 2 items, all right? You just draw them randomly out of the bag here. All right, this is going to the diner. This goat is going to the diner because, of course, what goat would not want to go to a diner? There it is. And this canteen is also in the diner. What do you know? All right, so these items would go there. Then it says place Willie at the motel. Okay, so here's Willie. Willie wants to end up at the tavern, okay, but he starts at the motel. All right, so we find the motel, which is right here, and he wants to get to the tavern, which is over here. All right, and you could do that by moving them with you or guiding them. If you get these people back to where they wanted to go, you remove them from the board and you get a perk card, which is good. If they get defeated by monsters, the terror level goes up. That's not good. All right, so the next thing we would do is look at the bottom, and what this is saying is this is specifically for the Jersey Devil. So if the Jersey Devil was in play, you would activate it, move it to the nearest investigator or potentially a bystander, and then roll that number of attack dice. Okay, but the Jersey Devil's not in this game. We were saying it's the Chupacabra and the Banshee of the Badlands. So here it's saying do the frenzied monster, which in our case would be the Banshee. They would move to and then roll dice. There are cases where these could be the same monster. So if you did have the Jersey Devil in play and they had the frenzied marker, they would activate twice. All right, so you roll these dice, a number of them depending on what the card says, and it has a couple of different faces here. Well, first it has blank faces, which as the investigators, you want those because that means they miss. They also have these hits, and they've got these action icons, which I'm trying to find one right there, okay? So the hits are simply going to hit you, but you can block them by discarding items. The actions are going to be on the actual boards here, okay? So in the case of the Banshee, if you roll that, every time, for every one of those symbols, move all violins 1 space towards the skeleton per power icon rolled, all right? That's not good. You want them in the safe zone. If you activate their whale, you're moving them further towards the skeleton, okay? The Chupacabra has a voracious appetite. You discard one of those tokens from the board per power symbol rolled, one of the gray power or brown power symbols or tokens, sorry, okay? So they're going to do their monster strike, all right? And if they defeat you, you go back to the hospital and you move the terror marker up. So this is really what you're worried about. You don't want to get attacked and defeated by the monsters, and you don't want these people here, these innocent bystanders, either to get defeated by the monsters, because if you get here, you lose the game. What you need to do is defeat the monsters first. All right, very basic overview. If you've played the original Horrified, this is going to be remarkably similar. It's essentially the same game. Let's go back and I'll tell you what my final thoughts are. Okay, so that was Horrified American Monsters. The first thing that I'll say right off the bat is that if you are familiar with the original Horrified, if you've played it at any point, you can see that essentially these are the same games. You have different monsters, different investigators, but the general flow of the game is exactly the same. It feels very familiar. I'll put it that way. It feels very familiar. So first thing I want to do is talk about some benchmarks. These are just some big picture ideas that I like to discuss. The first is the setup and tear down, and in Horrified American Monsters, the setup and tear down is very, very manageable. It doesn't take a tremendous amount of time. You do have to put some items out there on the board, and you have to set up the monsters in a particular way, but I appreciate that they do a very good job of explaining in detail how to set up each of the monsters. On the back of each of those monster boards is an explanation of how they're all set up. And so that works out very well. It's not too hard to do, doesn't take a lot of time. The other thing I like to discuss is rules. And in the case of Horrified American Monsters, the rule book I felt was clear. It was filled with some illustrated examples, which I always appreciate. I also very much appreciate that at the back of the rule book, and I believe this was the same case in the original Horrified, they had a breakdown for each individual monster and went into much more detail than on the actual monster boards themselves about the complexity and any potential clarifications that may need to be there that you might have while playing the game. I feel like the rules were solid, well organized, easy to understand, and complete. The next thing I like to talk about are art and components. And I've got really nothing but positives here. I feel like the game looks great. It has a wonderful art style and aesthetic. Again, it's very similar in feel to the original Horrified. I might actually like this one a little bit more. I'm kind of on the fence. I like them both, but I think I might like the art and aesthetic of this one a little bit more. It's got that kind of, I don't know, they both have their own feel, but this one really kind of sings for me. I really like the look of it. I like the look of all of the creatures. I like the board. The board looks very bright and pops on the table. Really nicely done there. The draw bag is different from the original one, and I actually like the draw bag in this version of the game more than in the original Horrified. I feel like it's easier to kind of root around in there, shake up the bag, get it nice and randomized. They were both fine. The original was just kind of a regular draw bag, but I feel like this one is an improvement. It feels sturdy. It has the nice Velcro closure. I actually prefer it. The other thing I'll say is that for the price, and this is a game that is you can find at big box stores. That's at least in the United States, it is first being sold in big box stores. I feel like the minis are good quality for the price. Now, there are not a lot of them because you just have minis for the monsters and for the investigators and for the bystanders. You've got standees. That works just fine. I really feel like I wouldn't necessarily want all of the minis on the board if everything was represented by minis. The minis that are there, I feel like, are fine quality, what you would expect for a game at this retail price point. All right, overall game impressions. First, I'll talk about the one thing that maybe didn't work as well for me or is a slight negative, and then I'll talk about the things that I enjoyed about the game. The first thing is something I alluded to right at the very top, is that I don't know that if you have Horrified, you would need this game unless you particularly liked these creatures, because Horrified American Monsters feels more like an expansion than it does a new game. It doesn't really change anything about the core system of Horrified, and the original game was set up in such a way that you couldn't really expand it because all of the monster cards were specific to those monsters. So in American Monsters, what they've done is they've changed it a bit and they've put letters. All right, now those letters do correspond to the individual monsters, but I feel like you could now expand it by just putting letters. All right, so I don't know if they're doing that in such a way to make it modular, to make it so that you can easily add monsters to this particular game, or if they're going to continue to have kind of like standalone games if they do release more in the line. And I imagine they might do that. It's a popular series. But if you already have Horrified and you love the classic Universal monsters and these monsters don't really appeal to you, I don't know that you would need this because it really is more of the same. Now, speaking of that, I loved Horrified. I loved the original Horrified, and this is no different. It keeps the same solid family weight cooperative gameplay that Horrified did. This is one of those games that I would absolutely feel comfortable playing in a group of mixed gaming backgrounds. Non-gamers, light gamers, heavy gamers even. I feel like this is a game that can bring everyone together. It's a nice family weight game, but another positive is it has a great level of difficulty curve. So some of the best adjustable difficulty that I can think of in any cooperative game, because you can adjust it in so many ways. You can adjust it by which monsters you are playing with. You can adjust it by the number of monsters that you're playing it with. So it really makes it a very versatile cooperative game, and you can kind of tailor it to the needs of the particular group that is playing. The new monsters feel fun, they feel fresh. I happen to like the monsters in this one, maybe a little bit more than in the original game, but again, I liked both. This is one of those situations where I already liked Horrified. This is basically a new version of Horrified. It doesn't really change too much, and so therefore, it makes sense that I'm really a big fan of this game. As that being said, I'm going to be giving Horrified American Monsters an 8.5 out of 10 and a seal of excellence. It's one I can easily recommend, just keeping in mind that if you already have Horrified and these monsters don't appeal to you, you might not need to worry about this one. But if you like these monsters, if you liked Horrified, or if you've never played Horrified and this appeals to you, this theme, this type of, this group of monsters appeals to you, you definitely should check this one out. I think it's a fantastic game. All right, well, that's it for me. This is Mike DiLisio signing off from Dice Tower headquarters.